Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 3, Episode 9.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we're going to jump right back into where we left off on the book Journeys Out of the Body by Dr. Robert Monroe. We left off on chapter 15, and it's titled Sexuality in the Second State. So before we dive into this chapter, I wanted to try to equate sexual desire with any of the other physical conditions of the body, because ultimately they all need to be dealt with. Now, Dr. Monroe focuses on sexuality specifically in this chapter, but again, we have to deal with all of those physical demands of the body, right? So if you are too hungry, or if you've eaten too much before you lay down and listen to the tapes, these are going to distract you, right? Things like, are you too cold or are you too hot, right? So in earlier episodes, I talked about trying to listen to tape 1-5, but my feet were very cold and my legs were cold, and it really took me out of the tapes. I couldn't focus, right? Or if you're in pain, if you have physical pain, like myself, I have a medical condition that is chronic that sometimes causes pain. So we have to deal with those things before we can listen to the tapes, because they will, again, act as an anchor for our spirit body and pull us back to our physical body because of distractions, right? It's why we talk about when we lay down to listen to the tapes, it's very important not to have points of strain where we're crossing our legs or folding our arms, where those strain points might become painful, or you may lose circulation. These are all things that are going to distract you and pull you back into the physical body, right? And sexuality is no different. So although Dr. Monroe goes a little bit deeper into this chapter, I think that's the basics of what we're looking to take from this. Now, of course, we've also talked about that there is no manifestation without imagination. So if, say, you are trying to manifest a partner in your life to deal with these sexual desires, you may want to carry on those desires with you, bring them with you into the tape. Is that your purpose, right? If you're, say, listening to tape 1-6, where Dr. Monroe allows you to just explore your purpose for listening to the tape. Well, if it is to attract someone, then maybe you want to bring those desires with you while you listen. If you are, say, going to talk or think about finances or starting a business, or if you have a problem that you're trying to solve, maybe a science project or an art project, something you're working on, then maybe you don't want to be distracted by these other desires, right? So you do have to deal with it before you start listening to those tapes. So I think that's the most important part, is that we have to deal with the physical issues, the physical demands of the body, so they do not become distractions or, like I said, anchors that are going to keep us attached to the physical body, okay? So before we go into this, we're not here to debate sexuality and its role in society or culture today. That's not the goal of this episode, right? But remember that the notes that Dr. Monroe is reading from, these are from the late 50s and early 60s. And the few things that I've highlighted in this chapter, I want you to really hear how he talks about sexuality back then and how taboo and sinful it still was back then. And really think of Dr. Monroe as kind of being a pioneer, not only in what he's writing in this book about astral travel and out-of-body experiences and stuff, all things that you really shouldn't have been talking about back then, but then to add sexuality into it, I thought was very interesting. So let's hear what Dr. Monroe has to say, chapter 15, Sexuality in the Second State. He says here, with the label of evil long pinned to the subject, the underground probably ignores it as something grossly material and unworthy of any bearing in spiritual development. Much the same pattern has applied to religions, formal and otherwise. Like food, this necessity was manipulated in man's history again and again under artificial rules and taboos to exercise control over the mass populace. Okay, Dr. Monroe said that sex has been used against us to control the mass populace by calling it evil, even though it's just a natural necessity of humankind, right? It's so amazing, again, to think that he wrote this, over 50 years ago now? He says here, to a great extent, this still applies as a basic control over our desires and actions. Oh, so do they still control us with sexuality today? I think they do more than ever, folks. And he says here, watch almost any American TV commercial to observe one facet, listen to a hellfire and damnation preacher for another. Study the uncensored history of any major civilization or religion for a longer look, right? So he's saying that whether it is trying to tantalize us through the media or trying to demonize us through the religion, again, these are forms of control. Let's see. He also says here, for I have been subjected to the same environmental concepts and conditioning as any American. Even now, after a deconditioning process, I sense echoes of guilt and sin in attempting to bring some candor to this section. So again, even just trying to talk about this in his book, Dr. Monroe is saying he feels guilty and sinful for it, okay? So here's from his notes from 1958. As in the past, every time I tried to think of going farther than 10 feet from the physical body, the idea of sex stopped me. The new technique was, instead of fighting the idea or ignoring it or denying its existence, I thought, yes, the idea is a very good one, and I will do something about it. It will just be a little while, but first I want to go somewhere else. So basically he's saying that in the second state, if you find these desires coming up and they are starting to distract you, one of the things that you can do is just say, hey, I recognize that. That's something that we're going to do later on. We'll deal with it in the future, but right now I have something else to focus on, right? So let's see. He says here later on, he says, try to examine objectively your own desires specifically, without the conditioning factors to which you have been exposed. Take away the rules and taboos and look closely without emotional bias. It can be done. Perhaps you too will wonder how mankind could have been so greatly misdirected. Okay. So, again, this topic of sexuality is so huge in Western society today, and it's gotten quite scrambled, if you will. And what Dr. Monroe here is saying, that no matter what conditioning has been put on you about this subject, or really any other subject that you want to really look at, He says, when you are in the out-of-body experience, when you are thinking about these things, if it's your purpose to examine these type of things, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do it without the conditioning factors to which you have been exposed. So again, whether you have been exposed to any type of desires like this are sinful or evil, or the opposite, that they should maybe be too overly celebrated and be the focal point of your life, whatever it may be, you're going to look at these issues without the conditioning that we've been exposed to. We're going to take away the rules and taboos that other people have tried to force upon us, whether it's this issue or any other, and we're going to look at it without an emotional basis. We're going to try to really understand it without those emotions. And we can do this in the second state. We can do this in our sleep dojo. We can do this as part of our self-help, right? And this is hopefully going to stop us from being so greatly misdirected, okay? So let's see. He says, perhaps there is a way to examine this under very strictly controlled conditions. That is, if there is a society mature enough to undertake the experience or experiments. So again, I think he's talking about dealing with these desires and thinking about them in the out-of-body experience, taking notes, trying to get a better understanding of what this desire, or really any other emotional or physical human condition that we have, really starting to examine what they truly are. But are we mature enough as a society to undertake these experiments? And again, this was written back in the late 50s, right? So let's see. I'll let you read through most of Dr. Monroe's notes on your own, the different situations that he ran into, basically the kind of dream state that he would get into where he would be distracted by these desires, okay? But towards the end here, he says, we continue to evaluate sexuality as good or bad strictly in terms of such inhibitions, restrictions, and social structure. The fallacy of this viewpoint is shown in that in our own space-time continuum, we cannot reconcile sexual practice with social rules, nor agree on this subject among the various social orders now in existence. Folks, it seems more prevalent than ever today. And again, this was written over 50 years ago. So that was chapter 15, Sexuality in the Second State. And really the main point that we have to take from this is this idea of any of the physical conditions that our body might be in that we have to deal with prior to listening to the tapes, right? Whether you're hungry, whether you're too cold, whether you're too caffeinated or too tired, whether you're in pain, you want to make sure you don't have strain points. Hell, even if you just need to use the restroom, these are all physical things that are going to act as an anchor and distract us and pull us back into the physical body. Okay, so let's move into chapter 16, preliminary exercises. And now we're really getting to the meat and potatoes of what it means to actually do the Gateway Experience tapes and the different fundamental steps that we need to take in order to achieve these different states of being, right? And what's interesting, again, these are notes, and this book was written before Dr. Monroe created the Gateway Experience tapes. And we're able to kind of read through his thoughts on why he made the tapes the way he did, all the different steps in our preparatory process, right? He kind of explains what each of those steps does, and he didn't even really know what those steps were yet. Again, he hadn't developed the tapes yet. So it's very interesting to hear that. And these are all things that he was just learning through his own experimentation when he was taking a nap in the afternoon or going to bed at night. So again, chapter 16, preliminary exercises. Throughout this writing, I have made many references to one evident fact, The only possible way for an individual to appreciate the reality of this second body and existence within it is to experience it themselves. That's right, folks. I'm not here to convince you of my experiences. And I'm not here to convince you of Dr. Monroe's experiences. I'm here to convince you to have your own experiences. Let's see what he has to say here. Evidence has led me to believe that most, if not all, human beings leave their physical bodies in varying degrees during sleep. Okay. Subsequent reading has proved that this idea is thousands of years old in man's history. If it is a valid premise, then the condition itself is not unnatural. On the other hand, conscious, willful practice of separation from the physical is contrary to the pattern, it would seem, in view of the limited data available. So again, this idea of leaving the body while we sleep is thousands of years old and recorded throughout man's history. That's what we've been taught to believe, is that when we fall asleep, our spirit body leaves into the dreamland, right? Now we're saying when you do it consciously, is that the same thing? We are breaking the pattern of falling asleep and being unconscious during this. Now we're trying to do it consciously. Let's see here. It says, a note of caution is in order here for those who are interested in experiencing or experimenting. For once opened, the doorway to this experience cannot be closed. That's right, folks. When you start to listen to the tapes and you start to experience the tapes, there is no going back. Your thought process, your emotions, your spirituality will be fundamentally changed for the rest of your life. There is no going back, right? It's like going on a roller coaster for the very first time and experiencing how thrilling it can be or how scary, right? You're going to have those memories for the rest of your life. And the same thing here. When you experience these tapes, there is no going back. More exactly, it is a case of you can't live with it and you can't live without it. The activity and resultant awareness are quite incompatible with the science, religion, and mores of the society in which we live. So again, some of the things you're going to experience, some of the things you are going to learn and become aware of when you listen to the Gateway Experience tapes, they are not going to sit well with today's science, religion, and just rules of society and culture, okay? History is strewn with martyrs whose only crime was nonconformity. We are a bunch of nonconformist folks. I have been almost my entire life, no matter how hard I have fought against it. If your interest in research become commonly known, you run the risk of being labeled a freak, a phony, or worse, of even being ostracized. In spite of this, something extremely vital would be missing if you did not continue to explore and investigate. We've talked about this before, Mind War Season 1. When you start listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, when you start to experience them and things in your life start to occur that you just quite can't explain, right? When you then add it to your spirituality and you really start to grow and change as a person, it's going to be very exciting. And you may want to make the same mistakes I did and try to tell your family and friends all about it. And I'm guessing, folks, if they are like mine, they will not be very excited to hear what you have to say, okay? They're going to be confused and scared for you. So, in Season 1 of Mind War, we talked about do not propagandize those closest to you. In a way, you're going to be your own intelligence agent. You're going to be your own spy. You're going to be doing these things covertly behind their backs, okay? I know that sounds bad, but we're going to do this on our own. But we can talk to others who are out there doing this type of work right now. You're listening to one here. There's so many people out there who are experimenting with the tapes. Talk to them, right? Talk to other people who might not be so close in your life that they're going to become worried if you start doing these things, right? Wait until those positive and good changes in your life have been made. And when they start to recognize them and say, wow, how did you do this? How did you do that? You can say, here's what I did. Then you can start to propagandize them if they're worthy. There is one great obstacle to the investigation of the second body and the environment in which it operates. This is the barrier of blind, unreasoning fear. Okay, so one of the big obstacles that people are going to have with investigating the second body is fear. They're just too darn scared, again, because of cultural and societal norms, right? We are taught through religion and all kinds of other nonsensical belief systems that this type of stuff is dangerous and evil and scary and shouldn't even be thought about. So those people automatically are not going to be a part of this. Okay, there's just no. Again, they may come to us at some point, but right now, those societal and cultural and religious things, they're in front of them. It's, again, they're a part of their team, and you're going against their team by doing this type of stuff, right? And so that's where that fear is going to come into. Then we have the next group of people who are going to maybe reluctantly listen to the tapes, right? They're doing it because they have run out of options or things like that, or maybe because it's part of a project that they're working on or something like that. They're like, well, we're going to listen, we're going to try it, and they'll be scared and maybe not listen anymore. And then there's folks like us. There is no fear in what we do here. We know what we're doing. We know that we are explorers, okay? We know that we are pioneers in this research, okay? That's what this is. That's what all of this is. It is research, investigation. Even if, millions and millions of people have done what we're doing here, and it's been recorded a million different ways, until you experience it yourself, it's not real. Okay. And so not only are we at the forefront of this, still in the small numbers of people, and, I've calculated maybe thousands, tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 people or so have kind of experimented with this. At one point in the 70s, there may have been higher numbers, and who knows how far they went into it when this book really first came out and the tapes were first released, right? The MZOO Institute was very famous and very, active. But again, still very small numbers of pioneers and explorers like us who do not fear. We fear not knowing. All right. Okay, so the fear barrier is multifaceted, many-faceted. First and foremost, there is the fear of death, right? A lot of people believe that leaving the body is part of dying, okay? And so they fear just the idea of getting anywhere close to death. Death, again, is another one of those very taboo subjects that we're not supposed to talk about. But I think it needs to be talked about, and I think it needs to be celebrated and accepted for what it is. And it's amazing, that when you listen to these tapes and you have some of these experiences, your outlook on life really is going to change. I know it has for me, and I think it's also happening because of my age and where I'm at in life right now. But that fear of death is not as strong as it used to be. And in the past, it wasn't necessarily that I was afraid of dying, but I was more afraid that I hadn't accomplished the things that I need to do, right? And so today, through the Gateway Experience tapes, through this last 2.5 years of spiritual searching and this journey that I've been on, I am accomplishing what I need to do. Everything that you see here, the art around me and the podcast you're watching, these things, this is my purpose, right? So now that I know that I am accomplishing my purpose, there is less fear of death and what comes next, right? So the second aspect of fear, the fear barrier is also linked with the death fear. Will I be able to return to the physical? Okay. I have never once in my experiences with the Gateway Experience tapes had any trouble returning back to the physical body. Never once. It was always very natural feeling. It felt very cool. You return to the physical body in multiple ways. Whether you are just going into focus 10 and then waking back up, or even just expanding your awareness in focus 12, like we've talked about, and coming back into the physical body, or having, as we will in future episodes, going into the full out-of-body experience. It feels amazing when you come back in. You come back in different ways, but never once have I felt like I wasn't going to be able to reconnect with the physical body. And, we've talked about the cord. There feels like there's almost an umbilical cord connected from your spirit body, the mind of your spirit body, to your physical mind, right? There's just nothing that I've done where I've felt any fear that I was not able to get back into the physical. So the third basic fear was fear of the unknown. You're not going to find that here with us, folks. Okay. If you're listening to this, if you're reading through these books and you're working through the Gateway Experience with us, there is no fear of the unknown. You are here because of the unknown. Your fear, like mine, was the unknown. The idea of not knowing was the fear, is what pushed me into this type of experience, into doing these experiments. And I think it's probably the same for you in many ways, almost an anger for not knowing, right? Especially this idea that there are others out there in the world who did know and were trying to keep it secret. Those type of things were very frustrating for me, and they still are today, because the tools, the techniques, the things that we are going to learn through the Gateway Experience and in future episodes of Mind War as we get into the spiritual, and the fact that these teachings that I'm trying to share with you have been suppressed. I believe they've been known by a good amount of people, a lot of people who are very powerful in our world today, and they try to suppress this information. And that's what frustrates me. This is what we should have been taught as children. Not restrictive, sinful, damning religion. And then being told, hey, just go get drunk and, watch sports and here's pornography and all these things. And we're going to create this black and white world where we're going to pull everyone back and forth through, are you good or are you bad? All of just the nonsense that our society and culture has been built on. It has just been a mess for the last several decades, right? And that's where some of my anger comes from, as you see it in my art or maybe hear in my voice today, the fact that this information was suppressed from us. It's why I do this work today. It's why I say that we are the opposite of a secret society. There are no more secrets, okay? We are trying to explain this to the best of our ability for anyone and everyone who will listen. Another fear is the consequent effects on the physical body as well as on the conscious mind of participation and experimentation in this form of activity. My physical body has done nothing but improved since I've been listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, and as we go through the tapes, I will tell you exactly which ones helped with that physical body renewal, right? We're getting very close. And then as far as the conscious mind, it has expanded my thought process. I feel like I am, again, no longer under the thumb of all those old paradigms, the cultural and societal wet blankets that are forced upon us. We don't have to be a part of those things anymore. They don't matter. More and more and more, you will start to understand that the things that we have been told that matter in our lives and in our worlds don't matter at all. It's amazing when you understand that. when you start to strip away that team mentality and say, I'm just not on that team anymore. It's amazing when you put those things down and start to really discover who and what you truly are and what you really want out of life. Okay, so those were some of the fears that we had to overcome. And now we're going to start talking about some of the actual steps that we take to get into the out-of-body experience or and beyond, right? So that first step is relaxation, okay? The ability to relax is the first prerequisite, perhaps even the first step itself. It is deliberately generated and is both physical and mental. And again, remember, this is before the gateway experience tapes. These are the things that Dr. Monroe is taking from his notes, saying, this is how I do it. Now, what we have with the gateway experience tapes is that we aren't necessarily going to follow all of the things that Dr. Monroe writes in his notes here, because he systematically built them into the preparatory process of the gateway experience tapes, and we'll point those out as we go through. So one of the things we have to be careful of is impatience of any sort can effectively stifle your prospects for success. If you are impatient, if you've had too much caffeine, if you have some appointment that you need to go to, it's going to be an anchor. It's going to distract you, and you're not going to be able to do it. It's again, where we talked about the physical issues that we have to deal with. Also think of those kind of emotional or conscious issues that we have to deal with. You don't want to go into listening to the tapes and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm thinking about all these other things. I have to wake up. I'm only going to be able to do this for a short amount of time. Give yourself time to relax. Make sure that you're in a state of mind and state of being that's going to allow you to become deeply relaxed. Next, he says auto or self-hypnosis, right? Of course, hypnosis is part of what we're doing here. Hypnosis is that focus 10 where our body is falling asleep. It's deeply relaxed, but our mind is still awake and conscious, right? Now, he talks here about learning hypnosis from a professional hypnotist, right? We're not going to do that. We don't need to go out and look for other hypnotists. You can if you want, because Dr. Monroe is that professional hypnotist who is first going to hypnotize us in the early Wave 1 tapes. He's the one that puts us into the Focus 10 state of hypnosis. But then he teaches us again how to do it ourselves, because before we even get out of Wave 1, he no longer walks us through the different steps of the preparatory process. He just simply says, do your preparatory process. You know what to do. You know how to get into Focus 10. And then you start counting yourself from 1 to 10 into that hypnotic state. Okay, so this next part I thought was very interesting. We're going to go through this in some detail here. Borderland sleep state. This is what I kind of think of as Focus 10 when we're in that sleep dojo. This is perhaps the easiest and most natural method and usually ensures relaxation of both body and mind simultaneously. The difficulty here lies in the maintenance of that delicate edge between sleep and complete wakefulness. All too often, you simply fall asleep, and that ends the experiment for the moment. So again, what we're going to learn and what you're going to experience is that as you go through the tapes, you are going to get to a point where you're trying to focus on something, but then your mind just wanders off into this dreamlike state. You kind of just wander into locale 2. But if you're trying to focus on something specifically, again, if you're trying to manifest something through your imagination, you don't want to just go off and have a wild dream. You kind of have to wake yourself up multiple times and say, hey, no, get back here. Focus on what we're doing. We're not going to just let our mind wander. Now he says, by practice, conscious awareness can be taken up to this borderland state, into it and through it to your destination. There is no way to achieve it that I know of other than practice. The technique is as follows. Lie down, preferably when you're tired and sleepy, As you become relaxed and start to drift off into sleep, hold your mental attention on something, anything, with your eyes closed. Once you can hold your borderland state indefinitely without falling asleep, you have passed the first stage. Okay, so again, you're lying there, your eyes are closed, you're tired, and you are drifting off into sleep. But instead of letting your mind wander, you're going to think about something in your mind and you're going to focus on it. For me, I use the symbols you see before you in the American flag pyramid design. The symbols you see behind me in, this is to represent reflection. This round symbol you hear behind me is to represent the sleep dojo, the state of being in the world beyond the black mirror, right? On the other side of reflections, the other side of the mirror. That's what this symbol here represents. And we'll get more into that in detail in future seasons, right? But I used these symbols. These are what I would focus on in my mind. Instead of allowing myself to just drift off into sleep and allow my mind to wander, I used symbolism. And of course, I used my own symbolism because it has meaning to me. And I would suggest you do the same. Whether it's creating your own symbol or sigil or whatever it may be. Again, we'll talk about that in future seasons of Mind War when we get into the spiritual practices. But these things are important. You're going to want to have something to focus on, right? It is, however, a normal pattern to fall asleep many times in the process of this consciousness deepening. You will not be able to help yourself, but do not let this discourage you. Again, as you fall asleep and you get into that dreamlike state, don't be discouraged. Just refocus your attention. It is not an overnight process. You will know you are successful when you become bored and expect something more to happen. Okay, that's part of it. This is about practice. We're going to practice this over and over again. Sometimes practice gets boring. I haven't experienced anything boring about the Gateway Experience tapes at all. Okay, this part is very interesting. This is good stuff here, folks. So, when you fixate, the picture thought you have been holding slips away and you find yourself thinking of something else. You are close to completion of condition A. So he talks about these kind of different conditions, these different levels as we get into Focus 10. And he says you're going to fixate on that picture, that symbolism. You're going to focus on it, right? You're going to fixate on it. But once you get to the point where you're relaxed enough that your mind starts to wander into sleep state, that's when you know you're making progress. Now we're getting somewhere. Once you have achieved condition A, that's what he calls condition A, the ability to hold calmly in the borderland state indefinitely with your mind on an exclusive thought, you are ready for the next step. So again, allowing yourself to get into a very deep, relaxed state, but you're still consciously focusing on one thing. That's condition A. Condition B is similar, but with the concentration eliminated. Do not think of anything, but remain poised between wakefulness and sleep. Check this out. Simply look through your closed eyes at the blackness ahead of you. Do nothing more. Okay, this is very important. When you are in Focus 10, when you are getting into this deeply relaxed state, your eyes are closed. Again, there's kind of two states of being. You're either going to be imagining something, whether it's a singular, exclusive something like a symbol, which really you have to focus and concentrate on, but you're going to visualize it in front of you. You're going to see it. Right? Or if you let your mind wander and you go into the sleep state, then you're just going to have a dream, whatever that dream might be, you're going to be seeing it, right? But condition B is when your body is in that deep sleep, but you don't have to imagine anything in front of you. Now, you are simply looking through your closed eyes at the blackness ahead of you. That blackness ahead of you, the sleep dojo. In future episodes, when we go off into locale 3, the abyss, the darkness, okay? That's what he's talking about. With your conscious mind looking into the darkness. This is where fear comes in for a lot of you, right? A lot of folks out there, they're afraid of the dark. They feel like we're supposed to go to the light. That's what we've always been told. But I promise you folks, the light is a lie. Eventually, the light will fade and disappear, and we will only be left with blackness, darkness. Here is your time to investigate it and not be fearful of it. Because I promise you, when you do, it is so beautiful. It is so calming. It's wonderful. It's not a place to be afraid of. After a number of these exercises, you may hallucinate mind pictures or light patterns. These seem to have no great significance and may merely be forms of neural discharge. I can remember, for example, attempting to achieve this state after watching a football game on TV for several hours. All I saw were mind pictures of football players tackling, running, passing, etc. It took at least a half an hour for the pattern to fade away. These mind pictures are apparently related to your visual concentration in the preceding 8 to 10 hours. The more intense the concentration, the longer it seems to take to eliminate the impressions. Okay. Folks, I have done this countless times, okay? If I have been playing video games, my favorite video game, Battlefield 1, for multiple hours right before I go to sleep, when I lay down and close my eyes, I see that video game being played over and over and over again in my mind as if I'm almost playing it just in my mind. It's almost no difference than actually playing it in your conscious mind. And that's what Dr. Monroe is talking about here. Sometimes when you try to listen to the tapes, if you've just been doom scrolling or playing video games, or like he said here, watching a football game or something, those visual patterns might be distracting you, right? Or if you are trying to manifest something in your life, you should use those visuals, those visual aids prior to listening to the tapes. If you want to manifest something in your life, a business or whatever it may be that you're working on, visualize it. Think about it. Look at your business plan or whatever it may be. Look at the science project you're working on or the art piece that you just can't quite figure out how to finish or whatever it might be. You're going to look at that over and over again, and you're going to play that in your mind and allow yourself to use that as a visualization tool, okay? So now moving into condition C is a systematic deepening of consciousness while in the B state. So again, the B state, deeply relaxed, you're looking into the darkness. You don't have to stay conscious by thinking about something, right? Because that's part of what we're doing. We're allowing our body to fall asleep while we consciously think and imagine something. When we keep our focus on it, it helps the mind not just wander and fall into an unconscious state, but it keeps us conscious. Then in the B state, that visual reminder kind of disappears. We don't need it anymore because now our body is asleep. And now we're going to get into that C state where we're going to go deeper and deeper into the relaxation. He says this is approached by carefully letting go of the rigid hold on the borderland sleep edge and drifting deeper little by little during each exercise. You will learn to establish degrees of this deepening of consciousness by going down to a given level and returning at will. And you've already seen that. Dr. Monroe will have us go deeper, deeper, deeper. And then he says, okay, now we're going back to focus 10. Come on, we're going to wake back up a little bit. And then he'll say, okay, are you ready? We're going to go slip back into focus 12. Ready? Let's go back down into focus 12, deeper and deeper, or expand ourselves further and further. Now we're going to come back, right? You will recognize these degrees by the shutting down of various sensory mechanism inputs. The sense of touch apparently goes first. You seem to have no feeling in any part of your body. Smell and taste soon follow. The auditory signals are next, and the last to fade out is vision. Sometimes the last two are reversed. I suspect that the reason for vision being last is that the exercise calls for the use of visual networks even in the blackness. So even when our eyes are closed, we're still using our visual perception and awareness to imagine the things in front of us and see them in the darkness, right? But he's also talking about how our five physical senses start to disappear, okay? I wonder what that is. I wonder what's stopping that. We've talked about it before, and we will more in a moment here. And then condition D is basically, he's saying you can get to these deeper states of relaxation even while you're awake. And these are some of those other tools that he's taught us, where when we want to think about something, or we need to find something, or come up with a solution for something, we're going to distract ourselves, take a deep breath, and then get into kind of a deep, relaxed state, even if it's just for a moment. And then that allows us to have a clear understanding of, oh, where did we leave that thing? What is the solution to the problem I'm working on right now, right? And you can do that. You can get into that deep, relaxed state from a conscious, awake state simply by staying focused on something, taking a few deep breaths, allowing yourself to really just get into a deep, relaxed state, focusing on whatever it is you're doing, and then snapping yourself out of it. We're going to get into that more in future seasons when we get into magic. I think that is really a magical practice, I believe, is what he's talking about there with condition D. Okay, so in this chapter, here we go. Induction by drugs. Okay, so getting into this relaxed state through the use of drugs. Let's see what Dr. Monroe has to say. None of the relaxation-producing drugs that are readily available seem to help. Barbiturates force a loss of conscious control and only bring a confused state in deeper consciousness. Okay, so barbiturates, I'm not sure exactly what those are. I think these are all kind of pain relievers, right? That's just going to make you lose consciousness. And that's not going to help with the tapes. You might not have your physical pain, but if you lose consciousness, then the tapes aren't working. You're basically just asleep. The same is true to a lesser degree for tranquilizers, okay? All right, same kind of thing. Relaxation is obtained, but at the cost of perception. Okay, again, you've fallen asleep, you've relaxed yourself, but you no longer can perceive what's going on. You're now unconscious. The tapes don't work if you're unconscious. Okay, so those drugs aren't going to help you. Alcohol in any form brings similar effects. I haven't drank in years. I've never drank using the Gateway Experience tapes. I don't suggest that you drink ever. I would cut it out of your life right now. Replace it with psilocybin. I dare you. The next time you have a desire to drink alcohol, especially if you're an alcoholic, drink or eat a handful of mushrooms and try to crack open that beer. Try to take that drink of vodka. I promise those cravings will disappear forever. You'll leave them in the toilet. Let's see. Here we go. More exotic compounds, such as the alkaloids and hallucinogens, may be more productive. Okay. I have not had enough experience or contact with these to offer an opinion or even an educated guess. It would seem that far-reaching research is indicated for these. Well, Dr. Monroe, I'm glad to tell you that all of these years later, I have done that far-reaching research for you, sir. At least when it comes to psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms, in combination with the Gateway Experience tapes. When taken, along with THC, aka marijuana, ingested through the mouth, psilocybin at low doses will make the Gateway Experience tapes come alive 10, 100, infinite times more than you might get out of just a regular, unenhanced, I like to call these things enhancements to the tapes, right? And they truly do make them come alive, make them more real. Number 2, the state of vibration. Okay, so that number 1 thing when we're talking about these preliminary exercises, relaxation is number 1, and that state of vibration is number 2. So aids to the vibrational state. Again, he says here, lie down in the position that is comfortable for you, and make sure that you're warm, he says, right? Wear clothes that are going to be a little bit warmer than you normally would. Again, I've already talked about that when my feet were too cold. He says remove things like jewelry. I like to accompany those, add jewelry to my body when I'm listening to the tapes, especially if I'm listening as part of my spiritual practice. And then he says, don't go in a completely blacked out room so you have points of visual reference. I've only listened to the tapes with complete eye covers on, and every time that I've had the out-of-body experience in locale 1, the room, my bedroom that I saw when I came out of my body was fairly lit up. I could see it just as if it was during the day, even though the lights were off. There was no I wasn't disoriented or anything like that. So I don't necessarily know how important that actually is. So let's see. Absolute requisites. Ensure without question that you will not be disturbed in any way. Okay, so for me, not a big deal. I'm a hermit. I live here by myself. No one's going to come knock on my door or bother me. I turn my phone off, or at least turn the ringer off. Again, with tape 1-5, I told you that halfway through, I had to listen to it 3 times. The very first time, halfway through, my headphones just died. They disconnected from my phone. That completely took me out of the tape. That was a distraction. And I couldn't just, from that, I couldn't just reconnect them and then start back where I picked up. No, you can't pick up where you left off. You have to start from the beginning again. Once you're brought out of it, you're out of that relaxed state, or if you have left your body, if you come rushing back into it, you can't just pick up where you left off. You have to start over again. Not a big deal. Don't be discouraged if you do. Again, tape 1-5, 3 times. I listened to it in one day, and that 3rd time, it was worth the work because it was an amazing experience. Next is achieve the state of relaxation. Do this by whatever method you have found that works for you. Again, Dr. Monroe walks us through the different steps in our preparatory process to reach that level of relaxation now. These are his notes. This is before he developed the tape. So he's saying, listen, if you're trying this, back then, hey, just whatever relaxes you, whatever thing that you've learned, right? If you've learned additional relaxation techniques, sure, you can add them into the tapes. Just make sure they're not distracting you or taken away from them. Next, you're going to establish the vibrational waves. As you continue breathing through your mouth, concentrate on the blackness in front of your closed eyes. Again, that sleep dojo. We're in the upside down world of Stranger Things. The blackness in front of us. You're going to look at it with your physical eyes. You're going to allow yourself to open your eyes in the darkness. Not physically, but what your eyes are closed. Your body's falling asleep, but you're consciously awake, and you are going to see into that darkness. Do not be afraid. Look first into the blackness at a spot a foot away from your forehead. Now move your point of concentration a few feet away, and then further and further. Hold for a while until your point is firmly established. And from there, turn the point 90 degrees upward in a parallel line to the body axis and reaching out above your head. Reach for the vibrations at that spot. Then you will find them. Mentally pull them back into your head. Okay, so this establishment of the vibration. And, okay, so that's part of the resonant tuning. Again, that second stage of our preparatory process, resonant tuning. It kind of sounds like we're in a cave with a bunch of other people and we're doing our Om breathing, right? We're breathing in, we're physically making a sound, right? So again, you're going to be laying in bed by yourself, headphones on, eye covers on, listening to the tapes. And if somebody walked in, they're going to hear you going, Om, right? You're going to be humming along with the voices that you hear, again, in your resonant tuning. That's what this establishment of the vibration is. That's what we're doing in those steps. Again, he didn't have the steps created yet, but that's what we do through the resonant tuning. And then when he says, now you're going to focus your perception, you're going to look into the darkness about 3 to 6 feet away, and you're going to keep moving that darkness out. And then that perception, you're going to move upwards 90 degrees. Remember, I've talked about before, as we are expanding our awareness, our perception moves upward, almost backward, and then stretches our perception out through the top of our head. Not a spirit body. We haven't manifested the spirit body. We haven't materialized this plasma-like spirit body that we're going to then, travel through the locales with. This is simply our perception, our thought process. We can think outside of our body. And when we do, again, I've described it as almost electric, static feeling. It feels like just kind of electricity kind of flowing outwards, or a white light, right? That is your perception, and you're able to think outside of your body. Now he says here, the surging, hissing, and rhythmically pulsating wave of fiery sparks comes roaring into your head. From there, it seems to sweep throughout your body, making it rigid and immobile. Okay, folks, I'm going to read that again, and then I want you, what do you think he's talking about here? He says, as you get into this deeply relaxed state, and you are establishing your vibrational control and your vibrational waves, he says, you're going to feel a surging, hissing, and rhythmically pulsating wave of fiery sparks that come roaring into your head. And from there, it seems to sweep throughout your body, making it rigid and immobile. I think what Dr. Monroe is talking about here is being conscious when your body releases the chemicals GABA, glycine. We've talked about them before. Those are the natural chemicals that our body releases during sleep in order to paralyze our body, so we're not thrashing around all night long as we dream, falling off a bed, scratching ourselves if we're fighting somebody in a nightmare or something, right? If those chemicals didn't paralyze our body, we'd be in all kinds of trouble. We'd beat the crap out of ourselves while we slept, right? So I think what Dr. Monroe here is saying, when you have these feelings, when this kind of, again, this light, this rushing roar of fiery sparks kind of releases from your mind and then travels through your body, which then becomes rigid and immobile, I think he's simply talking about being consciously aware of your body producing GABA-glycine, the chemical that causes us to be paralyzed while we sleep, this temporary paralysis. This is what sleep paralysis is all about. The same thing is happening, but your eyes are open for it. So you are consciously aware of the room around you. And then when you start to see monsters and all sorts of things, that is simply the dream state being superimposed on your real world, the real world in front of you that your physical eyes are seeing while you're falling asleep in this sleep paralysis state, right? Again, we're not going to be doing that because we're putting the eye covers on, right? We're saving that other stuff. We're going to be able to control those things later on in the spiritual side because we won't be closing our eyes in future seasons. Number 3, control of the vibrations. So you have acclimatization and accommodation, which basically is just recognizing the fact that we are going to get into this deeply relaxed state, that it's very comforting and stuff like that. But again, we have to move past that fear state and just realize, oh, this is what we're doing. This is how this works now. And then there's manipulation and modularization. or modulation. Once you have eliminated any fear reactions, you are ready to control the steps. You can direct your vibrations, right? And we'll get into that in future episodes when we start to really harness this energy that we're building and create things with it, okay? But really, this one is once you've gotten into that relaxed state, just being conscious and aware that now we can do things. We're in the sleep dojo. Now we can do things. We can create things. We can manifest things in this world, right? So let's finish up this chapter, preliminary exercises, okay? Dr. Monroe says, these vibrations will increase with frequency, like a motor starting up, until the frequency is so high that you are unable to perceive it. At this phase, the sensory effect is one of body warmth, slightly tingling, but not excessively so. Again, I've described this state of being as very warm, comforting, pain-free, full of love. It's a good place to be. He says, consistent achievement of this stage is the sign that you are ready for the first physical disassociation experiment. Another word of warning is in order here. Beyond this point, I believe you cannot turn back. And we're going to figure out where that point is after a word from our sponsor.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War.
Welcome back, folks. We just finished chapters 15 and 16 out of the book Journeys Out of the Body by Dr. Robert Monroe. We covered a lot of great material in the first half of today's episode. And now we are going to dive deep into Wave 2 Threshold, Tape 3, 1 month patterning. But before we get into the tape, so I decided to conduct a little experiment, right? So throughout the books and throughout the tapes, we hear Dr. Monroe talk about vibrations and vibrational energy, right? And we often hear these in other YouTube videos or other teachings, right? This frequency, and maybe we can be healed through vibration and frequency. So I've been looking at ways to, again, enhance the tapes, add things to them that can make them, work better. Again, we've talked about the good over-the-ear headphones. I prefer Beats Solo 3s. That's the one I use. Great eye covers. Again, comfortable clothes, being nice and warm in bed. I like to do the enhancements of low-dose THC and psilocybin. All of these things add to the experience. And I thought to myself, okay, if we're talking about vibration and frequency, maybe we can add vibration to the tapes. And I was reminded of, as a younger man, as a teenager, when all my friends would have those big giant subwoofers in their cars, and they would listening to the bass boosted music and the whole car would rattle. And I was thinking, that was always such a comforting feeling. It kind of was a pain reliever, right? It would just rattle through your whole body, and it was just like your whole body was being massaged, right? Every little cell, every little atom inside you was being massaged at the same time. And I thought, maybe we could add that to the tape. So my first experiment was with some subwoofers, okay? So the very first set of speakers that I tried were the Amazon Studio. It's an Echo that had an Echo subwoofer. So this was a small wireless speaker that had a secondary giant subwoofer that came with it. And my thought was, I'm going to put the subwoofer under my bed and I'll play some type of vibrational frequency underneath while I'm listening to the tapes, and maybe they'll kind of vibrate the bed and that'll add to it. The problem with that Amazon device, unfortunately, you were very restricted. You could only listen to music that came through the Amazon Music app, and that did not work at all. It was really a very poor design, and it's kind of sad to think that that might be the future of technology, where in order to use a piece of hardware, you are forced to use a specific app. That's not good. So those didn't work. I had to send that one back. So I tried another much larger speaker. This was dual subwoofers. It was like a wireless speaker that you would take for a party or to do karaoke with. And those were very cool. They sounded decent. The bass was amazing. The sound itself wasn't great. So ultimately, in order to get to actually feel any vibration, the speakers had to be so loud and the volume had to be so loud that it rattled the whole house. And to be honest, my best buddy Leo, my Boston Terrier, he was not interested in that level of bass. He was very scared of it. He didn't like it. So that experiment with those speakers only lasted a few minutes. So I said, you know what? Speakers aren't going to work. Let me look at something else. Maybe there's another device that we can use here. So what I ended up purchasing was basically a heated massage mat. Okay, so this looks a lot like a yoga mat. I was able to just roll it out and lay it on the bed. I put it under a couple layers of blankets. And then when I listened to the tapes, I laid on top of the mat, had a few more blankets on top of me, again, to stay nice and warm. I had the mat heating up. That helps. This warmth really does add to it because that's going to help take away any pain and things like that. And now this mat has basically 4 layers of vibrational pads in it, right? For your shoulders, your lower back, and hip area, and then your knees and your ankles, basically. And so what I did is I turned it to its lowest intensity and let it just vibrate through all of the pads, right? And then I started listening to the tape, and it was very interesting. And as we read through this, I'll talk about how this kind of, again, enhanced the tapes a bit. So again, Wave 2, Tape 3 is called 1 month patterning. Now, be very careful when listening to this tape. This is the first clear-cut example of there is no manifestation without imagination. Dr. Monroe is now going to teach us how to manifest scientifically basically the next month of our life. What do we want the next month to look like? We're patterning it. We're viewing it. We're thinking about it. And then we are going to live that pattern that we've created in our mind. So he starts the tape out, says, move now into your preparatory process. We've all done that. Now you're going to move to focus 12, the state of expanded awareness. We know how to do that. Let's see. Now, he says, you are relaxed and you feel calm and you're comfortable in focus 12. Now you will start the establishment and creation of new patterns of your total being. This is transformational. This is, again, part of the self-help that we're doing here with these tapes. We are still in the self-help phase of the Gateway Experience tapes. Wave 1 was our introduction, teaching us the tools and practices and techniques that we needed, our preparatory process. Wave 2 is more of the self-help, right? Again, Wave 1 had the self-help when dealing with our energy conversion box, dealing with our fears and things like that. But now here, we're also going to be now transforming ourselves. Now that we've dealt with some of those fears and those concerns, we've saw them for what they really are. Now we're going to start to transform ourselves into something better. He says here, remember, you will think of the pattern as completed, as an active reality to your total self, as your total self doing and being exactly as you desire. So when we are thinking, when we are imagining ourselves in this tape, we are going to be thinking of who we want to be, but not as, oh, this is something in the future. We're going to think of it as, oh, this is already completed. We already are this better version of ourselves. He says, I will guide you in this method. The first thing we're going to do is create a pattern. Think of your physical body. Think of the pattern that you would like your physical body to be. Build it. Make it stronger and stronger, more and more, okay? The first step, the first thing that he wants us to visualize and imagine of what we're going to be by the end of this month, right? Again, this 1 month patterning. He wants us to think of our physical body and what we're going to be like. For me personally, since we have moved into the warmer months, I was visualizing myself being stronger, putting on more muscle, maybe gaining a little more weight, something that because of my chronic medical condition, it's hard for me to eat food sometimes. That whole process can be painful. So sometimes I struggle with eating and keeping weight on. But I've been working very hard physically here in the Mind War Estates for the last few months. So I've been eating a lot. I have been physically growing. I do feel much better already. And so I was patterning myself as continuing that growth. I've been getting a ton of time outside now that it's sunny and warm outside, taking Leo outside to play. I've been spending a lot of time soaking up that sun, right? Getting that vitamin D, getting tanner, right? So these are things that, again, this is what I was visualizing myself as a month from now, is just being a little bit stronger, a little bit less pain, being more just calm and growing in strength in my physical body. He says, now release this pattern and let it flow out. This pattern of your physical body, your new physical body, let it flow out strongly, surely and beautifully out into all parts of your expanded awareness into all parts in all ways. Again, we are in focus 12 while we're doing this, that expanded state of awareness. Our physical body is less and less, we're almost not even aware of it. It is in a way, it's behind us now because our thought process is now up and above and outside of our physical body. We've expanded our awareness out, our thinking process. And he's saying, this thought process, this imagination of your new physical body, what it's going to be like as a healthier physical body a month from now, you're going to send that out into that expanded awareness. And you're going to see it slip off into the darkness, right? You're going to allow it to expand into all parts of the universe. But at the same time, it's going to expand this new thought, this new reality of you being a healthier, stronger, better you a month from now. It's going to permeate into every cell of your body. And it will be accomplished in a month from now. This is how this stuff works, folks. Sorry about that. Now the pattern is gone. It's gone from your center of consciousness. It has moved out in all areas of your expanded awareness, and now relax. So once we go through these steps again, he's going to give us a few moments to relax and kind of just take a few deep breaths and realize, whoa, what were we just doing? And it's very interesting as he does this. When he says relax, you do kind of get into a different breathing pattern because the process of imagining yourself being healthier and expanding out into the awareness is sort of intense, right? You maybe are taking shallow breaths at this time. And then when he says relax, you're kind of like, okay, whew, all right, that was intense. All right. And now we prepare for the next one. He says, now form another pattern, a pattern of your mental self. So instead of your physical self, put it at the center of your consciousness, this pattern, your desire for your mental self. Build it, make it stronger and stronger, more and more. And now release the pattern out. So again, instead of our physical self, what is our mental self going to look like? Okay, for me, that mental self, calm, clearing the mind. We've talked about that in the last episode. One of the kind of the messages that I received is that I need to clear my mind and stay focused. So that was my mental process, thinking of myself as being calm and centered. And I sent that out into my awareness, right? Out in all directions. Okay, let's see. So that was your mental awareness. Now think of the pattern of your emotional self. Your emotional self. You're going to do the same thing with your emotions, right? Again, for me, I have, through this work, really stabilized my emotions. A lot of the anger and maybe resentment and different emotional things I was dealing with when I first started this journey 2.5 years ago. I've worked through a lot of those things. So emotional stability is just the name of the game here in the Mind War Estates, right? Here in the Mind War Studios. So I just wanted to continue that on. Just nice and calm, emotionally stable, focused, very easy. I let that pattern, I let it release, right? Now form the pattern of your consciousness of your greater self, okay? And now this one was kind of interesting when he says the consciousness of your greater self, what is it going to be? And here's what I visualized, right? So through my art, you may have seen this on my Instagram, I have pictures of myself with 12 other me's, right? Basically, I've created my 12 disciples, okay? And when I do that, this team of me's, all the other versions of me that you see in those photos, they all have jobs to do, right? One of them is the accountant. One of them is the business manager. One of them does the editing of the videos. One of them is me. Actually, the main one is me that you're seeing right now, Victor, here doing the podcast for you. One of them is also the landscaper who takes care of the Mind War Estates, Leo's handler who takes care of Leo all day, right? They all represent different versions of me, my greater self, and all the different jobs that I had to do. So when I was looking and thinking about my consciousness of my greater self, it really was visualizing myself in all these different versions of me at the same time, going about my day, doing the things that I need to do in order to accomplish this goal of making the podcast and working through the tapes and, and also just the daily things I need to do in my life, my day job that I do once in a while, not as much as I probably should, but really visualize myself doing all of these things and accomplishing all of those things as the greater self, right? He says, now the pattern is gone. So we're going to, again, you're going to extend that out into your total awareness. You're going to release it and allow it to become real. Let's see. It's moved out. Now create the pattern of what you desire to do. Okay. Let's see. And the next one is also, you're going to create the pattern of what you desire to achieve. Okay. So what you want to do and what you want to achieve, these were kind of the same for me. I was focused on the same thing, right? And that was coming down here and making these videos, continuing to be successful over this next month as we complete season 3. So again, this is 1 month patterning. Over this next month, I still have 3 more episodes after this one that I need to make. That's going to be through the rest of this month, right? So I know it sounds boring, but I was visualizing myself coming down here, making these episodes for you, editing them, doing all the work that it takes to prepare for them by reading through the chapters and taking notes, preparing myself and listening to the tapes, experiencing the tapes and taking the notes afterwards so that I can share with you what I've experienced, right? I'm visualizing myself doing and achieving these things for the rest of the month. So in 3 or, after this one, 3 episodes from now, when season 3 ends, when we come to the end of season 3, you will know that the things that I created, this pattern in my mind, through listening to Wave 2 Tape 3, 1 month patterning, I achieved those things. I manifested them and they came true, right? That's what this is. That might sound silly. You might say, well, Victor, you were going to do this anyways. Okay, that's my job. That's what I'm doing right now, right? You could say, well, Victor, if you can manifest these things, if you're so good at this, why aren't you picturing yourself being some rich guy and being super famous and successful and all these type of things? Folks, that's not what I'm here for, all right? I'm an old man. If I would have been taught these things and at an earlier age, maybe that's what I would have done. Maybe I would have strived more for money and success and fame and all those type of things, but I didn't. I had other things I had to do as a younger man, right? And now I don't desire that stuff as much. It's not, for me, it's not about making a ton of money and becoming famous and doing any of that. That's not why I'm here, right? I'm here to share with you the things that I've learned. Not because I'm trying to convince you of my experiences, but because I want you to have these experiences on your own. If I can share this with other people, and even if just a handful of people listen and experience these things and learn from what I'm trying to teach here, and most importantly, fulfill the most crucial part of this, which is what I'm doing right here, is once you have these experiences, folks, you have to share them with others. Again, maybe not your closest family and friends. Maybe it takes some time for you to develop how you want to share your experiences and what format you want to. But really, that's the only thing I'm asking you to do, is once you have experienced the Gateway Experience tapes, once you've added them to your spirituality and you see your life changing, share it with others. That's really the only, commandment that we have to follow with these things. We have to do that. We have to share it with others. And that's what I'm here doing. I'm manifesting exactly the things that I want to be doing right now. You're seeing it by me making this podcast for you right now. I'm living the life that I've wanted, that I needed right now at this time in my life. Calm, relaxed. I'm able to focus on this task at hand. And after this 7-year art project is over, I'll retire from this type of work and maybe do something else, or maybe nothing else. Maybe I'll just retire and really become an old man. But for right now, the pattern that I've, again, created for this next month, to the desire to do and achieve, I visualized it. I visualized myself completing season 3 of Mind War, coming down here every week, sharing with you what I've learned, what I've experienced, and then I put that out into my total awareness. I allowed it to not only expand out into the universe as above, but permeate every small cell in my body as below, right? That's what that really means, okay? And again, so after we do this, Dr. Monroe says, now release the pattern, let it flow out, push it out, strongly and surely, okay? So those are the things that he's going to have us look at. So again, let's see. Our physical body, he wants us to think about that. He wants us to think about our mental self. He wants us to then think about our emotional self, okay? Then our consciousness and our greater self. We're going to be thinking and visualizing what these things are going to be like over the next month. And then he wants us to focus on what we want, what we desire to do and to achieve. And we're going to send those things out through our expanded awareness. And once we've done those things, he allows us to relax for a few moments. And then he says, you will now return to focus 10 by the method you have learned. Okay, so you go back from 10 to 12. So again, like we've talked about here in Wave 2, one of the tools that Dr. Monroe uses to help us expand our awareness is the sound of a rocket ship. It starts in your bottom left corner of your hearing, of your perception, and it sounds like it's taking off and it's flying in front of you and disappearing off into the right and just disappears off into space, right? And so now back to that massage, vibrating, and heat-filled mat that I had been using. So again, I had turned it on. And so as you're hearing the spaceship take off, this is where it really plays into it, okay? So the spaceship is taking off. You hear it just shooting out into space. And the whole time, now this mat is vibrating. It adds an extra dimension, a new physical feeling to the tapes, right? And it literally feels like you're in that vibrating rocket ship, just taking off out into space, right? And your physical body is vibrating. You're hearing it. You're visualizing this happening. And here's what happened, okay? So again, I'm new to this massage mat or vibration mat, right? It has a 30-minute timer, but the tapes we've talked about are from 35 to 40 minutes. So as the rocket ship had disappeared out into space, you know, it sounds like we have just shot out into the darkness. All of a sudden, the vibration, because it actually added a sound to it. You could kind of hear the vibration rattling into your headphones and stuff, and it really added to the sounds of the tapes. All of a sudden, it just out of nowhere shut off and there was silence. It was literally just like feeling like you all of a sudden were thrust into weightlessness, into no gravity. My physical body just disappeared. There was no weight. That expanded awareness, it just felt completely weightless. Like we were in zero gravity. And it's just like the movies, right? You see the astronaut in the driver's seat and the spaceship is rattling and it's shooting off into space. And then all of a sudden the rocket turns off. And now there they are in the silence floating as they look out into space and how beautiful and wonderful it is. That's exactly what it felt like. As soon as that vibrational mat turned off, I don't want to say that I had an out-of-body experience, but my awareness just floated off. It just floated upwards. It felt amazing. It felt, again, like zero gravity. So if you are having difficulty achieving this kind of sense of relaxation or this sense of kind of weightlessness that comes with listening to the tapes, maybe one of these vibrational mats could help, because it does add something to it. Now, there are a lot of different modes that it can be in. Even though I left the intensity at its lowest point, it was still fairly intense for listening to the tapes. It was in some ways a bit of a distraction, so I need to be careful with it as I do future experiments. But one of the patterns is also almost like a breathing or kind of a heartbeat style pattern, where I think that might play a little bit better into the sounds that are added with the tapes. And I'd like to see if I can time it or maybe extend the timer to go all the way through the tapes. But it did add a very cool physical sensation to the tapes, where when it was vibrating, you still kind of recognized your body was there. But you know how it is when you get out of an airplane or get off of a roller coaster or something like that, and your body kind of feels tingly, almost like, not like when your leg falls asleep, but maybe on the verge of that. And it was very interesting because the body, as soon as that vibrational mat turned off, the body disappeared. It was weightless. And I just felt myself floating there, kind of in that darkness. It was very interesting. And when Dr. Monroe talks about the visual, right, kind of the lights and things that you're going to see, when you close your eyes, you see light patterns and stuff like that. When the vibrational mat was on, my body was glowing like a white light, staticky kind of, right? And as soon as it shut off, that light went off too. And again, it was just darkness and just floating there. It felt so good. It was such an interesting feeling. I almost got butterflies in my stomach, right? It just kind of felt like the body just fell away. like it was miles below me, right? Like it just wasn't even there. It just dissolved. And now it's just your awareness out there floating. It felt very, very good. So again, Dr. Monroe talks us back from focus 12 to focus 10. Again, that expanded awareness where it kind of just feels like electricity or white light or static light just kind of flowing out of your body. As the physical body kind of re-envelops around you, now that awareness comes back in. You now are aware that you are back into your physical body. You're aware that you're in this shell, right? And now you're back into focus 10 as you are counting yourself down. And it was very, very interesting when I was counting from focus 12 to focus 10, right? It's only 2 numbers, but I only took 2 deep breaths while I was doing it. And it takes about a minute to get from 12 to 1. And so I noticed with each inhale and exhale, I could feel myself literally getting deeper into the physical body, really coming back in, landing back in the physical body, kind of being reabsorbed by the body, I guess would be a great way to describe it. So that was Wave 2 Threshold, Tape 3, 1 month patterning. Very powerful tape. Be cautious with it. When we are doing these patterning tapes, and there is another one, we'll talk about that in future seasons, right? Be very careful. You do not want your mind to wander during these tapes, right? You don't want to just start thinking about something negative or something that's upsetting you or be full of anxiety and stuff like that, because then what is the next month going to be full of? Anxiety and worry and all of those things, right? You want to try to free your mind from those. And I know that's difficult, but maybe that's why before you do this tape, maybe you have to revisit one of the earlier tapes, right? And when it comes to self-help and maintaining this newfound spirit, this newfound sense of self-worth and all of the things, the positive things that are going to come with this, maybe doing this 1 month patterning starts to become part of your ritual every month, maybe at the beginning of the month, or maybe you associate it with the full moon or the new moon or whatever, monthly thing that you want to connect this with. Maybe you do your 1 month patterning tape once a month and you think every month, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to achieve. This is who I'm going to be at the end of the month, right? It's not a bad way to address self-help. It's, again, can be fun. It can be a little more fun than boring therapy, all the pills and all that stuff. Again, I'm not a doctor. Don't stop doing those things if you're doing them. But again, this is a way that we can explore some of these issues on our own, right? Instead of going out to the doctor and, again, getting those few options that are available to us through our current healthcare system, we can look at parallel ways of doing this, and that's what we're doing here. These early tapes, wave 1, we're learning those processes, the tools and techniques that we need to do to achieve these things, right? Wave 2, we move into some of those self-help things. We're dealing with our emotions. We're focusing and manifesting what we want to be like in whether it's 1 month or, again, as we move into future seasons, it goes even longer. So we did great work today, folks. I appreciate you being here as always. And remember, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.